Part 163. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1621. Mrs. Wang's face was slightly cold, and Man Bao smiled at her and said, "If you have something to do, Mrs., go to work first." Mrs. Wang quickly returned to her senses, smiled and said yes, then took a money bag from Tianxi's hand and stuffed it in Man Bao's hand. "Today, there is really a labor, Dr. Zhou." Man Bao hesitated for a moment, then pushed it back and said, "You're welcome, madam. I am here as ordered. Since I am ordered, it is my duty. I cannot thank you." Mrs. Wang didn't expect that she would refuse. She was stunned for a moment and then immediately said, "I know that the Crown Prince has saved my son's life, but this is also our sincere thanks to you. We also ask Imperial Dr. Zhou not to dislike politeness." Seeing that Zhou Man was unwilling to accept it, Mrs. Wang said disappointedly, "It's still Tai Zhou who looks down on our orphans and widows, and his family is shallow, so." "Where is this?" Man Bao said quickly. "My family is still from the countryside, how can I look down on others?" Man Bao hesitated for a moment and said, "That's right, I came here on orders, and it would be bad if I took any more money." Seeing that her whole face was wrinkled, Mrs. Wang was in a bad mood. She couldn't help laughing at this moment. She forced the purse into Man Bao's hand and said, "This is our Imperial Dr. Xiezhou. The gift money has nothing to do with whether you were ordered to come." Man Bao glanced at Rong Si before accepting it. Mrs. Wang took the opportunity to say, "Tomorrow, we will invite Imperial Dr. Zhou to come and take a look again, so that our hearts can be reassured." Man Bao thought about it and nodded, "I will talk to His Royal Highness. When she leaves the palace, she needs the approval of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." Mrs. Wang breathed a sigh of relief and watched them leave. After walking out of the alley, Man Bao said to Rong Si, "Go to Daming Palace, and then go back to the palace by yourself. I will go back by water in the evening." Rong Si responded, turned his horse's head and walked to the other side, and then ran forward for a while. When he passed a carriage, he passed their carriage and stopped. One of them stuck his head out and shouted, "Man precious." Rong Si restrained the horse, and Man Bao stuck his head out of the window to look back, and saw Madame Tang looking at her from the window. Determined to be Man Bao, Mrs. Tang got out of the car. Man Bao was also slightly surprised. "Mrs. Tang, what a coincidence." She also jumped out of the carriage. Madame Tang put a fan on her head to hide from the sun, and said, "What a coincidence, this is my uncle's house, are you here to see Wang Rong?" Man Bao nodded hesitantly, then looked at Madame Tang in surprise and asked, "Is Wang Ji your father?" "Mrs. Tang, Wang Ji is my uncle, to be precise, my cousin. Our family is the big house, and theirs is the third house. Wang Rong is my cousin. How are others?" Man Bao tisk shook his head, because it was Madame Tang. She hesitated for a while and said, "The situation is not very good, it is estimated that he will suffer a lot of crimes, and he has injured his bones, at least 3 or 4 months will take care of him, this is still accepted. As long as the wound will not deteriorate, wait 3 days, as long as after 3 days, the wound has a tendency to scab but does not purify, he can be considered to have survived the test of his life." Madame Tang's face sank, "So serious?" "No, it's not much worse than Xiang Chao's caning, but Xiang Chao has survived with rough skin and thick flesh. Your cousin is too thin and tender. Mrs. Tang, one is the son of an aristocratic family, and the other is an outlaw who has been running for his life all the year round. How does this compare?" She took a deep breath and asked with a smile, "The prince asked you to come." Man Bao felt that everyone must have known about this by now, so she didn't hide it and nodded directly. Mrs. Tang nodded and said, "Okay, I see. I would like to thank you for visiting him. I will have to worry more in the future." Man Bao immediately smiled and said, well, that sister-in-law, shall I go first? Let's go. Before leaving, Mrs. Tang also stuffed her with a packet of snacks, which she brought to see Wang Rong, made by the cook at home, and the ingredients were very good. Man Bao happily accepted it and went to Daming Palace. She walked according to the procedure. She first saw the crown princess, and then went to see Prince Gong when she had time. She didn't go when she was free. Anyway, Prince Gong lost weight and looked at Aunt Chang and Prince Gong's own self-control. She also went there. It's just watching the other party suffer. When the sun went down, Man Bao returned from Daming Palace to the East Palace, and then went to reply to the prince and talked about Wang Rong's condition before leaving. As soon as she returned to the Changguan Museum, everyone immediately gathered around. Feng Zongping even rushed to speak in front of Bai Shan. I heard that you were ordered by the prince to go to the Wang family to treat Wang Ji's nephew. Man Bao nodded, you are really well informed. Bai Shan pulled the person to his side and said, have you eaten dinner? Let's eat first. Let's talk while eating, Feng Zongping said, it will be locked after dark. So everyone sat around in the dining hall watching Man Bao eat. Man Bao was not at all uncomfortable. She thought about it for a moment. When she left the Wang family, Mrs. Wang did not keep it a secret. When she went to see the prince just now, the prince did not warn her. Plus Mrs. Wang shouted so loudly when she was scolding people. Few people know. So Man Bao was no longer shy, and described Wang Rong's injury vividly while eating. Of course, he also described what Mrs. Wang and Wang Ji shouted in the air. All the classmates sighed, even the eldest Li Sanlang couldn't help sighing, Master Wang's shot is too ruthless, we thought it was all meant to play a few boards, and then locked in the room for a few days to pretend it's almost there, who knows it's actually a court staff. It is said to be riding a horse on a green crop, but more than 4 months have passed, and now the millet is about to be harvested. It is only a one-sided word of a few people, even if the imperial censor impeaches it, it is just an irrelevant punishment, Chen Erlang said, speaking of which, it was Lord Wang and the others who held on to us before, and the trivial matter made a big deal, and His Majesty was a little unhappy, so he punished him to think about it behind closed doors. There was no actual crime, and he thought about it for 10 days at most. I came back in half a month, why bother? Bai Shan couldn't help but said, you are all after the horse, and you can analyze it right now. Who was gloating when you entered the palace yesterday? Even we can't help sneering and gloating. Who knows what Mr. Wang is thinking? In order to recover faster. Can't you punish Wang Rong with ruthless hands? Zhao Liaolang said, but this is too hard. Bai Shan sighed and said, this is cruel, not my own son, so I don't feel bad. At this moment, the emperor is also saying to the queen, it's not his own son. It's too cruel to beat a child like that for such a trivial matter. The queen asked, then what is your majesty going to do? After thinking about it, the emperor said, I don't want to interfere too much in the affairs of the courtier's family. Let's see what the Wang family means first. If they ask me to be the master, I will naturally be fairer. The queen nodded, no matter what, you can't use the court staff. The emperor was convinced. Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1622. Madame Tang saw Wang Rong. Originally she wanted to see Wang Ji, the uncle, but after seeing the wounds on Wang Rong's back and thigh, Madame Tang left with a sullen face and did not go to see the court again. Uncle. Grandma Wang wiped her tears and sent Madame Tang out. After watching her carriage go away, she immediately turned around to look for her mother-in-law. Mother, Grandma, she left and didn't go next door. Mrs. Wang nodded with a sullen face, and gently fanned Wang Rong. The patriarch must ask. Wang Rong was still in a drowsiness, and Di Arning, who was left behind, was asked to go down to rest. At this moment, there was only their family in the room. After being silent for a while, Mrs. Wang said to Wang De, "Go get some sackcloth and take it out as a charge for your brother. Maybe it will be better." Wang De opened his mouth and said hesitantly, "Mother, this is not good." Mrs. Wang gritted her teeth, "Come on, there is no way out, your father was too early, your grandparents were still there at that time, so there was no separation in the family. We can only rely on my dowry to survive. Now your grandmother doesn't care about everything, and when such a big thing happened, the letter we sent has not been returned yet, and I don't know if I didn't receive it, or if I didn't want to come back for your elder brother." She said, "This time, we have offended your uncle and aunt. Even if you are kind and friendly later, the grudges in our hearts will not go away. They have a way to make our lives worse than death, so we might as well take this opportunity to part with us." Mrs. Wang wiped her tears and said, "If we had known earlier that staying in the capital would require the lives of your brothers, we might as well go back to Taiyuan as soon as possible. Even if we are poorer, we can still survive." Wang De also wiped away tears, knelt down and called, "Mother." Mrs. Wang said, "Your brother is already like this, but we can't go back in despair, otherwise the clans in Taiyuan still don't know what to think of us." She said with far-reaching eyes, "We were born in an aristocratic family, so outsiders look bright, it seems that no one dares to bully us, but they don't know that the bullies inside us are cruel, so even if we go back, we have to be righteous, go back with reason and power, so that they don't dare to bully us casually." Wang De responded, and went to the warehouse to get a few rolls of linen and started cutting. After Mrs. Tang left from the Guangdi Fang Wang family, she went back to the Kongai Yuan Feng Wang family to see her father with a look of anger. Her father was leisurely feeding the fish along the lake, and when he saw his daughter came back, he immediately waved his hand and smiled and asked, "Why are you free to come to me? I was about to tell you that the day I came to Beijing was also the same. After enough time, we will return to Taiyuan on another day." The patriarch Wang is the patriarch of the Wang clan. He does not hold an official position in the court. In fact, he was only busy with affairs in the clan, and the emperor wanted to rebuild the clan annals. Resign together. The patriarch Wang felt that it was boring to be an official, and the emperor did not treat him much, so he resigned along with him. When he was happy, he came to the capital from Taiyuan to live for a while to see his sons and daughters. When he was unhappy, he went back to Taiyuan and felt very comfortable. Madame Tang walked up to her father and asked with a calm face, "Father, did you know that Uncle Ji beat up cousin Rong?" "Huh? I heard that, because the child was riding a horse on a green crop. What happened?" Madame Tang said with luck, "Father, cousin Rong has always been cautious and soft-tempered. Will he ride a horse on a young crop? It's just that the horse stumbled and trampled a few plants, and the farmer made up for it at the time. To compensate." The patriarch Wang raised his hand to stop her, and said with a smile, "Silly child, it's just a court game, do you still want to find evidence to distinguish right from wrong? There is no need to distinguish right from wrong with outsiders, but the clan cannot help but know that it is not cousin Rong's fault that Uncle Ji was impeached. Speaking of which, he was implicated by Uncle Ji." The royal patriarch frowned, "They are direct uncles and nephews, and they are a family. One is prosperous and one is lost. What are the consequences?" Madame Tang said blankly, "Uncle Ji broke cousin Rong with a cord rod." The face of the royal patriarch sank, and the smile on his face was completely put away. "What did you say? What does Wang Ji use to play the board?" "Ting Kane," Madame Tang clenched her fists and said, "I went to see the injuries on cousin Rong's body. From the lower back to the thighs, it was completely like a caning execution. Where is the homemade board? I'll go." At the time, the person was still in a coma, and the middle part was broken. The royal patriarch dropped the fish food in his hand, turned around and left. When Mrs. Tang was about to catch up, he stopped and turned around and said, "Go home, you are a married woman, it's not easy to get involved too much in this matter, I'll just go and see for myself." Madame Tang stopped, thought about it and nodded, "Then I'm going back." The royal patriarch nodded and said with a frown, "You don't have to bully your son-in-law. The last time I saw him, there seemed to be a blue spot on his forehead. When I asked him, he said he fell, and I knew at a glance that you beat him." In the past, every time Tang he was beaten, when others asked him, he would say that he fell by himself, but how could an adult always bump into each other? Not a 2-year-old. "Madam Tang, that's what he fell." The patriarch Wang looked in disbelief, and Madam Tang was so angry that Tang he had fallen. It was raining the day before yesterday, and the gravel road in the garden was a little slippery. He had to hide to scare her, but he accidentally stepped on it. Slippery fell and bumped her head. Can it all depend on her? Mrs. Tang returned home angrily. It was rare that Mr. Tang, who was going home on time and was playing with his son, saw him. He was about to turn around and hide while holding his son, but Mrs. Tang saw it sharply and called out, "Stop." Master Tang hugged his son and turned around, put his son down in his arms, smiled at his wife, and led his son forward. "Madam is back." Madam Tang snorted and asked, "Why did you come back so early today?" "It's nothing, the drought is a foregone conclusion, most of the rice in the fields is yellow, and the next thing is harvesting. When they are almost dry, it's our turn to be busy, so my husband thought about taking advantage of it. I will spend more time with my wife during this time." Madame Tang's expression softened, and she patted her son's head and let him be led to play. Then she told him about the Wang Ji family, and said, "My father has passed, tomorrow I will let someone send some medicinal materials over, and it will take 3 days for Man Bao to be sure whether he is really out of danger." She got a little angry again. A good person was beaten to death. "I don't even know what Uncle Ji thinks." Master Tang frowned, pulled her away from all the servants and said, "Why, my father-in-law is still brooding about the clan history. Mrs. Tang, my father forgot about this long ago. He just doesn't like to think about Shu and doesn't like to be an official. That's why he stood with Mrs. Kui along the way. I'm afraid other rooms in the Wang family don't think so." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1623. The mouth and the tongue are still fighting. The Wang family has a big business. How could it be possible for everyone to work together, she said. What's more, the Wang family is not the only one in Taiyuan, Lanja County, Donghai County, and others. Zhongshan County, which one is good to be with? Madame Tang didn't think there was anything wrong with what they did, and said, "In the first place, Your Majesty can't do it properly. He wants to put their Longzi Li family in the first place, and there is no need to press us. Family, count up, the Longzi Li family is only a second or third-rate family. Master Tang, now my family isn't even second or third-rate. There's no way, who told me to fall in love with you?" The more the couple talked, the more they went wrong, and in the end, it was Master Tang who put the topic back on the right track. "I have also seen the struggle during this period of time. In the end, it's just that some people don't see the prince's smooth sailing." Wang's side has it. "Your favorite candidate?" Madame Tang said angrily, "Don't ask me about this, you know that my father is not an official now. Although he is the patriarch, he can't control everyone. I don't know what Uncle Ji thinks. I'm not interested, I just know one thing, that is to marry a chicken with a chicken, so I ask you, do you have someone in your heart?" "No," Tang magistrate immediately denied, "I am His Majesty's subject, and only His Majesty's." He happily took Madame Tang's hand and said, "Don't you see that although Changbo is a clerk in the Chongguan Museum, he is also His Majesty's person?" Madame Tang sneered, "I believe in you and him, but others may not believe it. You should go out less recently and socialize less." Master Tang responded immediately, and then helped his wife carefully back to the backyard. It is the time of life and death, when there are conflicting opinions and behaviors in a family, let alone between families. Don't look at the fact that they are standing together because of the prince at this time. When there is something that is of interest to them, they can also oppose each other temporarily. Wang Ji is the third-rank speaker, and the next step is the position of the old Tang. I don't know how many people are watching, so as soon as this matter came out, 2 colleagues from the same family went up to impeach Wang Ji. When the book was brought to the emperor was very satisfied and teased with Guzhong, "Do you think they are right or not, or are they just looking at interests?" Guzhong didn't dare to speak, he could only lower his head and smile. This kind of thing can only be seen as a matter of opinion. Perhaps the person who went up to the book simply couldn't see how Wang Ji treated his brother and nephew so poorly. The emperor did not approve the 2 papers, he suppressed it, and decided to wait for Wang's own handling before talking about it. The patriarch Wang stepped on the setting sun and entered the palace of Guangdifang, and he went straight to see Wang Rong. Mrs. Wang obviously did not expect the patriarch to come so quickly, so she hurriedly brought Wang De out to greet her. The patriarch Wang sighed at her, "Brother and sister, how is Rong?" Mrs. Wang's eyes were slightly red, and she took the patriarch Wang to see Wang Rong. Unfortunately, Wang Rong just woke up and drank a bowl of medicine, and now he fell asleep again. The doctors all said that it is better for him to fall asleep than not to fall asleep at this time. Several people in Manbao didn't bandage his wound. First, because the area was too large, it was difficult to bandage it. Second, because the weather was hot now, it was more important to ventilate the wound after the medicine was applied. Therefore, the requirements for people entering and leaving the room are stricter, and then cover it with a breathable white linen cloth to block the dust. The royal patriarch lifted the sackcloth and glanced at his injury, and was also taken aback. After all, he had only cut a lot of flesh in the morning, and although he was given the medicine in time, he was very ferocious at the moment. The blue veins jumped on the royal patriarch's forehead. Ordinary boards can't hit this kind of injury. Even if the force is strong, the most blood is a little, but most of it is a bruise. Ting stick. The patriarch Wang gently covered the cloth back, looked down at Wang Rong for a while, then turned his head and nodded to Mrs. Wang, then turned to go out. When he went out, he had time to look at the yard, and found that there was a linen hanging in the corner. It seemed to be half hung, and it seemed to be half taken, and he couldn't help being surprised. "This is..." Mrs. Wang burst into tears and choked. "Last night, the doctor said that Ronger was not well, so I asked his brother to make some preparations. If it wouldn't make him feel uneasy." The face of the patriarch Wang became more and more ugly. Just as he was about to speak, Wang Ji and his wife hurried over from the next door, apparently receiving the news that the patriarch was coming. The patriarch Wang swallowed what he was about to say, and looked at Wang Ji without anger. Wang Ji hurriedly stepped forward and saluted, bowed to the end and said, "Why didn't you tell me in advance when the eldest brother is here, and the younger brother can go out and welcome him from afar?" Mrs. Wang also stepped forward and saluted, and then grabbed Mrs. Wang's hand. Seeing that her eyes were red, she couldn't help but press the corner of her eyes with a handkerchief and said, "Sister-in-law, how is Ronger? Now Imperial Physician Chen is still in our courtyard, or you can let him take a look." Mrs. Wang pulled her hand back and said blankly, "Thank you brother and sister, let him show you. Didn't you get out of bed yesterday?" As for Ronger, she has already invited Joe from Taiyuan Hospital. The Imperial Physician is looking at it, and now there are doctors from the Baohe Medical Center and Ji Shitang watching, so I feel at ease. Madame Wang looked a little embarrassed. The king's patriarch's gaze fell on her face, and he said lightly, "It turns out that my younger brother and sister are also sick, so why are you here? Let's go back to recuperate quickly, and be careful that your condition worsens." Madame Wang hurriedly lowered her head and said, "My concubine's illness has gotten better, it's all an old illness, it's been a while." The patriarch Wang snorted softly and asked Wang Ji directly, "How many times have you come here from the day before yesterday to today?" Mrs. Wang sneered. Wang Ji opened his mouth, but he couldn't speak, so he could only bow his head. The royal patriarch turned around and said, "You come with me." Wang Ji gave Madame Wang a wink and hurriedly followed the patriarch Wang away. The two were actually about the same age, but in front of the patriarch Wang, Wang Ji had to stand, especially when the other party was angry. After entering the front hall, there were only two people in the room. Even Wang De, who had sent them outside the hall, could only wait outside, let alone the people. Because there were only two of them, the patriarch Wang spoke more directly, "Why use a cane?" Wang Ji quickly shouted injustice, "Brother, you know me, how can I be such a cruel person? I said I would punish him, but I didn't expect the servant to use a court rod, and Wrong's child was also stubborn. He didn't say a word, otherwise I would have stopped him." The patriarch Wang narrowed his eyes and looked at him, saying, "Wang Rong is about to wake up, you have to think about it clearly. He always knew if you were there when he was punished, right? Can he seal people's mouths and Wang Rong's mouths?" Wang Ji opened his mouth and lowered his head to stop talking. When the royal patriarch saw this, he slapped the table angrily, and after a while, he said solemnly, "Bring Auntie back. It's not a child anymore, my son is almost an adult and married, and teaching is just embarrassing each other, it is better to solve it directly. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1624. Although the patriarch Wang didn't ask Mrs. Wang how she wanted to solve it, he wasn't stupid. Just by looking at Mrs. Wang's attitude towards Wang Ji and his wife, he knew that they couldn't have lived under the same roof. If you stay any longer, it's hard to say that people will be killed. The patriarch Wang sighed and asked Wang Ji to bring his mother back from the temple in the suburbs. Then he went to see Mrs. Wang and said bluntly, "I plan to go back to Taiyuan in 2 days, but seeing Wrong like this, I don't mind staying for a while. How do you want to solve this?" Mrs. Wang dared to play tricks to fool other people, but did not dare to hold it in front of the patriarch, so she bent her knees and said, "Patriarch Hui, our family will not be returning to Taiyuan for a long time, and we want to go back to Taiyuan with the patriarch." The patriarch Wang understood, nodded, and without asking any more questions, got up and said, "You should take good care of Wrong first, and wait until the family is ready tomorrow." Mrs. Wang bowed her head. Mrs. Wang sent the patriarch Wang to the door, and the waiting Wang Ji and his wife immediately cheered up. The patriarch Wang paused as he walked past them, and said, "You guys also go in and look at Wrong's injury, and look in the warehouse. Bring him some medicine." Wang Ji responded, and after sending the patriarch Wang onto the carriage, he turned his head to look at Mrs. Wang, paused, then bent slightly and said, "Sister-in-law, our 3 bedrooms have always been inferior to the first, second, and fifth bedrooms, no matter how many more we have in this family. When the mother comes back from the temple, you can ask her old man to call the shots, and the sister-in-law can also bring up anything that the younger brother does not do well, and ask the elder sister-in-law to focus on the overall situation." Mrs. Wang said blankly, "Is uncle going to see Wrong?" Wang Ji paused for a moment and then smiled, "Then let's take a look. Then go into the house with Mrs. Wang to see Wang Rong." The sackcloth was lifted, Madame Wang took a step back in fright, and then looked at Wang Ji in shock. Wang Ji's face changed slightly, he didn't expect his appearance to be so terrifying, and he stopped talking immediately. Mrs. Wang covered the cloth, then she sat on the edge of the bed and cried lowly. A sharp look flashed in Wang Ji's eyes, but in the end he didn't say anything. He bowed to Mrs. Wang and turned to leave. Mrs. Wang came back to her senses, hurriedly bowed to Mrs. Wang, and hurriedly went after Wang Ji. She chased Wang Ji through the courtyard gate, and didn't catch him until she was in the courtyard. She grabbed him and asked with a blushing face, "Why is it so serious? Didn't the master just ask someone to hit him 30 times? Wang Ji shook off her hand, glared at her and said, "Ask the warehouse to send them some more medicine, and you can take care of the account books at home overnight." Having said that, he turned around and left. Madame Wang was very angry. She said it nicely, and she made it up overnight. What should she do? What can you figure out in one night? Of course, nothing can be done. Even if it is too late to cheat, Wang Ji can make the person who goes to pick up his mother slow down a bit, delaying it for 3 or 2 days before thinking about returning. But the patriarch Wang is in a hurry to return to Taiyuan. When he left Guangdifang, he had someone rushed out of the city to pick him up before the city gate closed. Therefore, the next day Wang Ji sent out to pick up the old lady. Not long after they went out, the old lady's bicycle frame came back, and it happened to be stuck with Man Bao, who was visiting the doctor. Wrong Si told Man Bao, "Lord Zhou Xiao, the front is blocked." She lifted the curtains to look, and just saw the door of the Wang's house opened, and a carriage entered through the door with the threshold removed. Then Wrong Si took the car into the alley and stopped in front of the side door. Man Bao jumped out of the car and whispered to Wrong Si, "It must be the old lady of the Wang family back." Sure enough, it was the old lady of the Wang family who came back, and it was Man Bao who saw Wang Rong's illness, got the needles, and gave the medicine again. Seeing that Wang Rong was awake and only had a low-grade fever, he was satisfied. Nodded. Just as she was about to wash her hands and prepare to leave, there was a commotion from the yard, and as soon as she turned her head, she saw an old lady huffing in with a group of people. Man Bao couldn't help frowning, and glanced at Wang Rong, who was lying on the bed. Ever since she gave him the medicine, his ears had been red, and he couldn't help but look at Wang Rong, who shrank his whole body. She stretched out her hand to cover the dry buttocks with a sackcloth, and then asked the girl who beat the hand in the room to put down the curtain, and then went out to stop the group of people. The patient's injury area is too large, in order not to get infected, so many people can't enter. Mrs. Wang, who was catching up, breathed a sigh of relief, and then stood aside with low eyebrows. Man Bao smiled at the already angry old lady, and said, "The old lady can go in if she wants to see it. Now Wang Rong is awake. The others will wait outside first." Mrs. Wang didn't really want the old lady to see it, so she stepped forward to hold her hand and said, "Old lady, since Rong is awake, let's talk to him through the curtain. His injury is not very good, so that the child will not be ashamed." The old lady was also a little hesitant. The grandson was already in his 20s, and it was not very good to see his ass. Wang Rong, who was lying in the inner room, didn't know that many people had already seen it yesterday without him knowing, so now he deeply felt that what his aunt said was right, so he didn't dare to move. Not a single sound came out. Mrs. Wang glanced at Mrs. Wang, and then looked at Man Bao with a worried expression. "Dr. Zhou, has my son's wound been treated with medicine? Has the wound healed? Will I have to cut the flesh?" Man Bao said, "How can it be so fast? But now there is no pus, no rotten flesh, no need to cut it, but the person is still a little burnt. After 2 days, we will know whether the wound is healed or not." After the two said this, the old lady who had planned not to go in pushed away Madame Wang's hand and lifted the curtain to go in. After a while, there was an exclamation from the curtain. Wang Rong couldn't help but called out, "Grandmother." Mrs. Wang glanced at Mrs. Wang and immediately went in to support the old lady. The old lady held Wang Rong's hand, with tears in her eyes. She kept saying, You have suffered, child. How did your uncle get his hand? How did he get it? Man Bao stepped aside and stood with Dr. Ning. Dr. Ning lowered his voice and said to her, yesterday evening, the patriarch of the Wang clan came over. Although I didn't hear them, I estimate that Mr. Wang will suffer today. It's a pity, even if they suffer, they can't see the scene in person, because after the king's patriarch came, except for Wang Rong lying on the bed, Grandma Wang who was taking care of him, and their son who was only in his early 1-year-old and could not walk steadily, the others all went to the main courtyard next door. It's far from this side courtyard. Besides, Man Bao has to go back to the palace after seeing her illness. She still has a lot of things to do. So he could only look at Dr. Ning with regret, and left silently. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1625. As soon as Man Bao arrived at the East Palace, he couldn't help but share this lively event with the Crown Princess and Ming de Changjiao who was staying by the Crown Princess's side, and said regretfully, it's a pity we can't watch. The Crown Princess glanced at her angrily, and warned, don't watch the excitement of the aristocratic family, lest you hurt yourself at some point. Although Man Bao was disappointed, he nodded in agreement. Mainly, she has no other channels to watch, right? She has no channels, but the emperor and the prince have. Obviously, the father and son are very interested in the excitement of the Wang family. One asks Gu Zhong to go outside the Wang family and waits for news, and the other asks Gu Zhong to go directly. Maybe I haven't seen him for a long time, and it's time to play a game of chess with him. Gu Zhong responded with a smile, and then handed over the matter of serving the emperor to his apprentice, and he personally went to wait outside the Wang's house. This wait until the afternoon. The Wang family's meeting lasted from the morning to the afternoon, a total of more than 3 hours. Wang Ji's face was not very good, but he sent the patriarch Wang out of the door respectfully. Gu Zhong watched Wang Ji enter, and then got out of the car with a smile, greeted the patriarch Wang with a smile, and bowed, Mr. Wang, when your majesty heard that you came to Beijing, he really missed your chess skills, so I asked my family to invite you to the palace to play chess. The royal patriarch glanced at the carriage behind him, responded with a smile, and got on the carriage. The patriarch of the royal family entered the palace with a straight face, but he knew in his heart that the Wang family was still a joke. The emperor did not hide his motives for the joke at all. He had dealt with political affairs a long time ago, and then sat in the courtyard playing with the chessboard and waiting. The prince was also waiting by the side. As soon as the patriarch Wang came in, the father and son looked up at him in unison, and the emperor waved and smiled, here is Ziji. Come and see this new box of chess pieces that I have acquired. The patriarch Wang stepped forward with a smile, saluted and sat down, praising, this piece is cool and moist, it's not bad. The emperor set up a chessboard with him to play chess, and asked with a smile, I heard from the prince, the wound of a nephew in the third room of your family has deteriorated, or did you ask the imperial Dr. Zhou for treatment? I don't know what happened. The royal patriarch slandered, the imperial doctor is yours, don't you know better than me what happened to him? But he could only say with a smile on his face, I heard from the imperial doctor that as long as you feel at ease and recuperate, there will be no serious problem. He covered up, Wang Ji has good intentions, but he is tricky, so Wang Rong's child is wronged. The emperor raised his eyebrows, turned his head and said to the prince, I remember Wang Rong is not too young, do you have a suitable position for him? He smiled and said, I have seen the impeachment document of the censor desk, I am young and frivolous, who doesn't make a few mistakes when he is young, it is not a big mistake, that child can also correct his mistakes, his father went early, no one give him consideration for his career, it's rare for the prince to get along with him, so let's find something to do in the East Palace. Before the patriarch Wang spoke, the crown prince had already responded, and then said, It's also good that Wang Rong has a younger brother, Wang Da. I heard that he is now studying in the four schools. Wang Da was admitted, and the patriarch Wang only found out about this today. Originally, there was a place for Inian in their room. Wang Rong was an average student, so he kept his father's place for Inian, and wanted to keep it to his concubine. As a result, when his younger brother reached the age, it happened that Wang Ji's two sons were also of age. Wang Ji himself had a quota, which was obviously not enough, so he took them all. Brother Wang Rong had no choice but to go to other academies to study. In the second year, Wang Dake was admitted to the four schools. But in the end it is a year behind the two cousins, and a little behind. He also knew that Wang Da asked the prince for help. He was also a little angry at first, and it was too embarrassing for these matters in the family to be in front of the king. The other person is in the capital. If Mrs. Wang wants to, she can find him. But after today's family splitting drama, the royal patriarch thought more. The tree has large branches, and each leaf faces in a different direction, not to mention people. As the patriarch, he can only focus on the general direction of the family's development. As for the small aspects, everyone has their own fate, so let them go. After considering it, the patriarch Wang raised his head with a smile and said, "Today, Wang Rong's family said they want to go back to Taiyuan with me, but they may not necessarily stay for their official career. Your Highness can ask them directly." The prince smiled and asked, "Why did they suddenly want to go back to Taiyuan? I remember that their old lady is still there. They live in two places. What if the old lady misses her children and grandchildren?" The patriarch Wang smiled and said, "They split up. The old lady and the eldest grandson have passed. It's still too hot in the capital. It's okay to come and see the peony in spring, and Taiyuan is better in other times." The royal patriarch turned his head and said to the emperor, "Your Majesty may not have been back to Taiyuan for many years, right?" The emperor stopped when he clicked, didn't ask any further questions, and said sadly, "Yeah, I haven't been back to Taiyuan for many years." Although the royal patriarch did not want to spread these humiliating trivial matters in the clan, it was obvious that such a major event as the separation of the family could not be concealed. Even if their family wouldn't say anything out, they could guess about it by inquiring about the property that the Wang Rong family had distributed. Even if Mrs. Wang has restrained her family members and servants from spreading rumors about her family's ugliness, but when Man Bao and the others went to see a doctor, the family members couldn't help but smile, plus the boxes and cages that were quietly cleaned up, they still knew whether few. On this day, the wound on Wang Rong's back began to scab over, and the fever subsided. After another injection, Man Bao said that the next step is to reconcile the wound and wait for the trauma to improve. She said to Wang Rong, who was still lying on her stomach, "Your internal injury is not yet healed, so you have to continue drinking this decoction. I have left the recipe and drink it for another half a month. The wound on your body is scabbing. You recently don't move around, be careful that the wound breaks open again, and the skin will be a little tight and itchy, so just bear with it." Wang Rong was seen by Zhou Man basically once a day. Although he was still ashamed at the moment, he was much better. He buried his head and lowered his head, only to raise his head when he heard people leaving. Man Bao has gone out and Mrs. Wang said that she will not come from tomorrow. Mrs. Wang already knew from Dr. Ning that her son's condition had stabilized and he was out of danger, so he gave Man Bao a big red seal. Thanks to Man Bao, Dr. Ning, who also left and returned to the hospital, also received a big red seal, and said that he would definitely come tomorrow to change Wang Rong's medicine on time. Then the two went out of the side door of Wang's house together, and Man Bao followed Dr. Ning's butt into his carriage. Dr. Ning looked at her silently, Man Bao also looked back at him silently, and then the two laughed together. Dr. Ning coughed lightly, "We say that the patient's family is not good, it goes against professional ethics. It spread all over the palace. We whispered what happened, and we won't spread it out. Dr. Ning was curious, has it spread all over the palace? Man Bao nodded, His Majesty even summoned the royal patriarch to ask. Dr. Ning finally lost his scruples and lowered his voice, I heard from the servants of the Wang family that Mrs. Wang and the others have shared nearly 70% of the property in this house, and even the family land has belonged to Wang Rong. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1626. Man Bao also immediately regained his spirits and asked enthusiastically, so much. Lord Wang is also willing. Dr. Ning said with a smile, I don't want to, I can't do anything about it. The patriarch of the Wang clan personally presided over the division. Wang Rong's father is the eldest son. According to the rules, their house should be divided into 70%. However, Lord Wang is indeed at a loss, Dr. Ning said with a smile. After so long, Lord Wang of the Changfang has been in charge of Lord Wang for more than 10 years. The family's industry has grown several times, but it has been cheaper for Lord Wang. Man Bao said, if you lose something, you will gain something. Sir Wang, these officials have gone so smoothly, don't you use your family's industry to run them. Man Bao is no longer a child. She is in the officialdom anyway. She is still young and doesn't want to be promoted. She is a woman, so she doesn't have much entertainment. But she saw several of her colleagues in the palace, and the usual entertainment was not small. How expensive is it to eat out, and that little salary is enough to go to Zhuangyuan building 4 or 5 times, not to mention having to support a family. Not to mention the expense of personal exchanges, salary alone is definitely not enough. Therefore, it would be unbelievable to say that Wang Jiquan was at fault for her. What's more, if it wasn't for his greed, how could he have lost today? Man Bao said, he could have split up after his father passed away. How much he manages at that time will naturally be his own. But he didn't split up the family, but lived with his widowed sister-in-law and 2 nephews. If he took care of him, he would be fine, but seeing what happened today, he obviously didn't take much care of him. Man Bao and Dr. Ning looked at each other and said secretly, sure enough, there is no difference between the big family and their small family, and they will be jealous over the division of property. Sure enough, people are all the same. But my mother said that good men don't eat family meals. Who doesn't build from nothing and accumulate from one to something? As long as people are diligent and keep their assigned fields, God will reward them with 3 points, and they will not starve to death. It is too greedy, and God will not see it, and take back some things. So Man Bao said to Bai Shan Bai Erlang when he returned, from the experience of Lord Wang, what my mother said was indeed right. Bai Shan nodded and asked, are you going to restore the prince's life? Man Bao said, go, but he is busy and has no time to see me for the time being. I will go again in the evening. She rolled her eyes and asked with a smile, you said, if the prince asks me what reward I want, can I say that I want to manage my own work field? After thinking about it, Bai Shan said, it's not easy. The Ministry of Households is in charge of the job field, and now His Royal Highness is in charge of the Ministry of Personnel. If you ask him, why don't you use Lu Huan's words to inquire with Lu Shangzhu? Man Bao was thoughtful. Bai Shan glanced at her and knew that she was worrying about her father's affairs. After thinking about it, he said, forget it, let me inquire about you and Lu Huan, but you have to wait until after Xiu Mu. Man Bao nodded again and again, I can wait. The prince didn't see Man Bao until the evening, and after asking about Wang Rong's situation, he waved Man Bao away. Man Bao couldn't help but quietly inquired with eunuch Wu, is your highness planning to use Wang Rong? Eunuch Wu smiled and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty has spoken. Since the Wang family already has a place for grace, it is better to let the prince also enter the four schools to study for a few years. Whether he can serve the court depends on his ability. I can't pass the big exam and the official exam." Man Bao thought about it. Since Wang Rong had to use the annoying quota left by his father, the cousin who was using his father's quota obviously couldn't use it. In this way, the loss of Lord Wang's court staff is huge, but Wang Rong's exchange for most of his life may not be worth it. Man Bao said, "I feel that life is more important." Eunuch Wu, "Nonsense, of course, life is more important. If you die, there is nothing left." At this time, Wang Ji had just recovered from the split 2 days ago. There was no other way. Today, Mrs. Wang sent someone to receive the things that were distributed to them in the warehouse. Even if he couldn't accept it in his heart, he had to accept it with a smile on his face. Watching them move things over there, Wang Ji turned around and went to the old lady's yard. Mrs. Wang was chanting Buddha, and did not open her eyes when she heard the movement. Wang Ji glanced at the mama who was waiting by the side, motioned her to go out, and then lifted up her robe and knelt behind the old lady, bowing her head and admitting her mistake. "Mother, your son is wrong, can you stay and let your son do his filial piety?" Mrs. Wang held the hand of the Buddha bead for a while, opened her eyes and looked at the Buddha statue on it, and said after a while, "Ronger and Da are still young, and I'm not too old to move, I'll go help first. They have been watching over them for a few years, and when I can't move in the future, I will naturally come back to see you, and then it's good that you don't dislike me as a mother-in-law." "Mother, there is a sister-in-law on Ronger's side. You have been enjoying your old age all these years, how can you let you worry about it?" Wang Ji advised. "You just stay, the elder brother is gone, you have to let it go. Filial piety, son. How can a mother go to live with her grandson when her son is still there?" But Mrs. Wang insisted, "I haven't been back to Taiyuan for many years. In the end, that's our roots. The capital is not far from Taiyuan. In the future, during the festivals, if you miss me, go back and have a look." "Mother." Old Madame Wang was silent for a long time, and then she turned to look at him. After a while, she couldn't help but slap him on the face. It was not heavy, but Wang Ji opened her mouth in surprise. Mrs. Wang shook her hands and put it down, lowered her voice and said, "I've been back for 3 days, and you never came to tell me why you used a cord rod on Ronger." Wang Ji hurriedly said, "Mother, my son just wanted to show off. He was impeached for riding a horse and out on a young crop. This is a serious crime. I think the family will punish him first, so I can't say anything about it. Whether this is true or not, and there are so many ways of punishing people, you make him kneel in the ancestral hall, beat him on the palm of his hand, even if it's hitting him with a board or whipping him, I will recognize it, but that's a cord stick. He also beat him 30 sticks, don't you know that ting sticks will kill people?" Madame Wang grabbed the clothes around his neck and said angrily, "He is your elder brother's only direct son, how can you bear it?" "Mother." The old lady Wang said to herself, "You are usually partial, but your nephew is not a son, because their brothers want to depend on you, so I won't say anything. So the family is in charge of your daughter-in-law, and you have transferred Da's place to me and her. I said that Da was good enough to study, so he could pass the test by himself. For the sake of the overall situation, it would be better for one more member of the family to enter the Imperial College." I acquiesced with one eye and one eye closed. Even your sister-in-law didn't say anything. "But how can you count Ronger's life?" "I don't," Wang Ji denied. "Mother, that stick looks terrible, but as long as he takes good care of his injuries, he will be fine. Didn't you listen to the doctor at Baohe Medical Center that his injury worsened because of drinking drink?" Mrs. Wang couldn't help but slap him fiercely in the face. "Shut up, I haven't asked you yet, who would allow you to strip his trousers and torture him with a cane, That's the punishment for a prisoner, he's in his 20s. He was tortured by taking off his trousers in front of his servants. How would you let him see people in the future? You just wanted to kill him, you. Mrs. Wang covered her heart, her eyes were wide open, and she fell straight back. Wang Ji was startled, and immediately stepped forward to support him. Mother, don't scare your son, come quickly. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1627. When Man Bao went to Chongqing Museum to repair books the next day, he learned that Mrs. Wang had fallen ill from a stroke. It was Xiao Yuanzheng who told her. Yesterday, the servants of Mrs. Wang's family took the post and went to the Thai hospital to ask for Dr. Chen. Not long after Dr. Chen went, he came to ask me again. Only when I went did I found out that the old lady had a stroke. Man Bao asked with concern, how is the old lady? Not only Man Bao, but the editors of Chongqing Museum who were repairing books at the next table also raised their ears. It's not a big problem, but it's not a small problem. I'm afraid it will be difficult to walk in the future, and the mouth is a little slanted. Fortunately, it is still mild, and it is possible to take care of it slowly. It may recover after a few years without getting angry. Man Bao lowered his voice curiously and asked, why did the old lady have a stroke? Xiao Yuanzheng gave her a meaningful look and said, I heard that I accidentally fell. But when he fell, he was still angry. The imperial physicians were not fools, and they almost knew when they felt the pulse. However, this is someone's family business. They are imperial physicians, and they are not officials, so they can't talk nonsense. Man Bao thought about it for a while, and after thinking about it, he propped his chin and said, Master Wang is very dangerous. Seeing her gloating, Xiao Yuan reached out and patted her on the head. Hurry up and fix your book, the acupuncture you have written has been checked and sent to the bookstore so that they can engrave and print it. Your Highness has given it to the bookstore. I went to various places to go to the paper, and after selecting this year's big exam, the Imperial Physician's Office will officially recruit the first batch of students. Man Bao was refreshed and immediately said, this speed is fast, don't worry, I can check it again within 3 days. Xiao Yuanzheng was really not at ease, and said, you should check it a few more times. We are imperial physicians, and this matter has nothing to do with us. Don't always think about listening to other people's stories. Man Bao responded, got it? The matter of the Wang family has come to an end here, and there are many fewer impeachments against the prince and Kong Wengan in the court. In fact, the price Wang Ji paid for this was a bit high. Not only did the family split up, but the old mother was also sick. You must know that Wang Ji is currently in a period of rising career. If his mother has something at this time, it will be Ding Yu. It is uncertain whether Ding Yu will be able to recover or not. If he had the character of the royal patriarch, he would naturally be happy not to be an official, but he wasn't. So at this moment, he didn't dare to hang around in front of the old lady, let alone ask the old lady to stay and live with him. After thinking about it, Mrs. Wang decided to take the old lady back to Taiyuan after Wang Rong and the old lady were healed. The brothers Wang Rong and Wang De moved out of the Wang residence, found another house to live in, and studied in the capital. Although it was not officially announced, everyone knew privately that the two brothers were cast under the gate of the East Palace. The Crown Prince sent an imperial doctor, who didn't take much effort to dissolve the matter, and also gathered 2 people from Wang's side. Although Wang Rong and Wang De may not have great achievements in the future, they are also members of the Wang family. Even if they run errands or give some news about the family, they are enough for the prince to pay back. No, even if Wang Rong and Wang De did nothing, the fame gained by the prince this time is enough. The former crown prince was so irritable, but now he is willing to send the imperial doctor to see the nephew of the official who impeached him. Although he also made a fuss about the officials, he would definitely not send an imperial physician, but he would definitely not send an imperial doctor, and wait for someone to die before he could use the dead to play against Wang Ji. Although many people still saw that the prince was uneasy and kind this time, they also had to admit that the prince became more merciful. For the monarch, having a benevolent heart is a major factor in gaining the approval of his subjects. Even the royal patriarch, who rarely participated in political struggles, began to seriously consider the future of Dajin. Will their Wang family also make some tendentious investments in this battle for the throne? Many people felt that Wang Ji and the family had suffered a terrible loss this time, and Yang Haoyi thought so too, and he couldn't help but talk about it during dinner, and said to his son, Wang Ji was scolded badly this time, and he beat people. This kind of thing, just act like it, he wants to use this thing to get rid of the eldest son, but his mind is still too vicious. Yang Heshu paused for a moment, then frowned and asked, Father also agrees that they will impeach Kong Wengan. What I agree to do, it's just a small matter. We are loyal to your majesty and don't engage in these party disputes. Yang Haoyi glanced at him and said, What's more, you are in the East Palace now, what should I do with Chongguan Pavilion? Although Yang Haoyi didn't like the prince very much, he was very satisfied with his son, so he would not do anything that would affect his son's career. Yang Heshu felt relieved after hearing this, but their Yang family is also an aristocratic family. Recently, the relationship between His Majesty and the Crown Prince and the aristocratic family was a little bit tense, so he couldn't help asking his father privately, Father, our family is different from other families, they participating in such a thing may be able to take the family out of the body, but our Yang family can't. Because there is a concubine Yang in the palace from their Yang family, and the fifth prince is also our Yang family. Of course, Lord Yang also knew this. He nodded and said, If you are a father, you are not stupid. Naturally, you understand. Yang Haoyi remembered something, lowered his voice and said, There is no problem with Yang's side, but Kui's side. He stared at Yang Heshu and said, Has your daughter-in-law been close to her family recently? Yang Heshu said, Father, Mrs. Kui is a knowledgeable and reasonable person. She will not do anything to harm me. Yang Haoyi glanced at his son's face and nodded slowly, indicating that he understood. Yang Heshu's face stiffened, he clearly didn't mean it that way, but it was impossible to correct it at this time. He shook his head, saluted his father and retired. Mrs. Kui was walking around the house with her waist to exercise and take loose meals. When she saw her husband coming back, she greeted her with a smile, Do you want tea, husband? Yang Heshu smiled, held her hand and said, No hurry, how is your body? It's getting heavier and heavier. Granny Wen said she could give birth in about a month after all, it was the first time to give birth to a child, and Kuishi was still a little scared. Zhu and Yang Heshu mentioned something that he had been thinking about for a long time, I thought about asking Man Bailey to help me take a look at the mansion. She is also very good at delivering babies. Yang Heshu pondered, it's just that she is an errand in the palace, I'm afraid it's difficult to get in and out. Seeing his wife frowning slightly, Yang Heshu said, Leave this to me, and I will mention it to His Highness and lend her out of the palace. Kuishi was relieved and nodded again and again. Since he wanted to borrow her, Yang Heshu naturally wanted to ask Man Bao in advance, so he asked her when he entered the palace the next day. Man Bao said without thinking, Okay, I may not see Mrs. Yang for a long time, last time the position of the fetus is alright when you feel her, so there shouldn't be a problem with the production. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1628. There is nothing in this world that flies faster than time. Before Man Bao finished checking acupuncture, the holiday came. Then they happily went out of the palace for a holiday and went home. As soon as he got home, Man Bao couldn't help but feel lazy, so he handed over a medical book that had been checked to Bai Shan, Please help me check for typos. Bai Shan is not very happy, he also has a lot of homework, and he also made an appointment with his friends to go out to play. Yin Or's disease should be cured. We also said to go see him. Isn't this a medical book? Why don't you just show them to a few of your students? Bai Shan said, not only can you check for typos, but also can you check if there are other mistakes. Haven't you been teaching them acupuncture? Bai Erlang didn't want them to spend their good vacation time at home, so he encouraged him. That's right, the palace servants and palace maids asked them to pierce them all over again, and I heard that even the guards ran to find them. I got a needle, should I learn it? Man Bao touched his chin and thought for a while, then immediately turned around to pack up and took 2 of the 3 medical books she wrote. Go, find them. Bai Shan ran back to get her a hat. Wait a while, let's go out to play by the way. When Lao Zhutu, who rarely met his daughter on vacation and wanted to be close to her, came over, Man Bao and the others had already run away. Zhenggu and Lu Yunu are both studying in the Ji Shitang. They now go to the East Palace every morning. Sometimes there is no problem, and they can solve the disease by themselves. In the past tense, they will solve their doubts, but in the past tense, the problems will be accumulated. Basically, as long as there are no special circumstances, Manbao will go to the side hall. Anyway, they are all in the East Palace, and they are not too far away. It takes a quarter of an hour to arrive, so it is considered a walk. When Manbao arrived, Zhenggu and Lu Yunu were occupying the consultation room where Manbao was sitting together to see a doctor, so they sent one patient away, and there was no one behind. Compared to other doctors, their consultation room was too deserted. Manbao stared at his head for a while, and asked, I see that there is no problem with the pulse case written by you. How come there are so few people seeking medical treatment from you? Dr. Lu was so ashamed that she wanted to lower her head to the ground. Zhenggu blushed slightly and explained in a low voice, they don't think the prescription we prescribed is so good. Manbao turned over their pulse records and prescriptions, and said, it's right not to compare, even now I don't dare to say that my prescription is better than Dr. Ding and the others. Take your time. Manbao said, you can't compare to other places. You can find it from other places. For example, Sunyang, you are a woman. There will definitely be female patients who prefer to choose you to see a doctor. Dr. Lu looked at Zhenggu with a sad expression on her face. Zhenggu. He hesitated, then I will go out more in the future? Leave the consultation room to you. Manbayadao, you guys are really stupid, just take your turns, and you also have strengths now. Basically, you have to go to the palace every day to learn acupuncture and moxibustion, why don't you keep it? For the same price, you also come with acupuncture and moxibustion, once twice is fine, if there are more times, someone will come to you to see a doctor if your reputation is out. He is obviously a small person, but he pretends to be serious and sincere. You are still young, it's time to learn your skills, so don't think about making money. Acupuncture costs needles and manpower, and it doesn't cost money, so it can be made with great effort. Zhenggu and Lu Yunu. The two looked at each other and nodded silently. Manbao took a pen and took the treatment, and re-prescribed the prescription according to their pulse case. You can check it out, there is no problem with the prescription you prescribed, and you have to learn to figure it out for yourself if you want to improve. But this matter is not the most important thing at the moment, the most important thing is that you help me check the 2 medical books for errors and omissions. The two were startled when they saw the big word acupuncture in the medical book. Master, can we check this? What can't you do? You have all learned the things here. If there is something you don't understand, it's even better. I'll write it down and I'll explain it to you. By the way, I have to check for typos, and I'll have to engrave it later. Acupuncture also starts from the most basic medical knowledge. In the first academic year, you basically study acupuncture points and some basic medical knowledge, and then you will learn specific acupuncture methods. If Zhenggu and Lu Yunu didn't know these basic things, they would have to study them again. Man Bao handed over the heavy responsibility, and then happily went to play with Bai Shan and the others. The weather is not so hot these days. Although several cities near the capital have been dry this year, it has not affected the still many vendors and tourists on the streets. A few people made an appointment to meet in the bookstore together. Yin or because he had been on sick leave at home, so he had nothing to do and waited in the bookstore early in the morning. When Man Bao and the others arrived, he had already flipped through half the book. Hearing their voices vaguely, he put the book back on the shelf and went out with Chang Shao. Man Bao looked at his face carefully, and said regretfully, "You took sick leave, and you haven't seen any fat yet. Haven't you eaten anything delicious for the past 8 days?" Yin "No, but because I suddenly stopped going to school, I'm still not used to it." The three of Man Bao were left with only envy. Bai Shan glanced outside and asked, "Why isn't Lu Huan here yet?" Yin or pointed to the tea hall opposite the bookstore and said, "Let's go there and wait." The four moved their positions. Lu Huan arrived a quarter of an hour late. Bai Erlang complained, so he poured himself a cup of tea and said, "It's not my fault, it's both of them." Lu Huan pointed at Bai Shan and Zhou Man and said, "I happened to meet my grandfather when I was going out. Didn't you ask me to ask about Shishan? I asked, and then I asked my grandfather to cut him off." Bai Shan was curious, "If you don't understand, ask, why did Lu Shangsha cut you?" Man Bao, "That's right, you can do it, you can't do it if you can't, why should you be angry about a word?" Lu Huan originally thought it was natural for his grandfather to be angry, but after being asked by the two of them, he lowered his head and thought, really, why was his grandfather angry? "Why are you scolding him?" Lu Huan instantly straightened his chest, "Yes, I'm not going through the back door for you, I just ask if I don't understand. This is asking for advice." Bai Shan nodded and turned to ask, "What did Lu Shangsha say?" "My grandfather said there was a precedent for this, but," he tried to make his grandfather's words mean, "but in the end a lot of job fields became private." Not only the three of Man Bao, but also Yin or were stunned. Why did the job field become a private field? Naturally, some people have been planting for a long time, and they have become private fields. Of course, those people are not ordinary people. Therefore, although the number of officials in the court has not increased much, the field has been expanding. Because every once in a while, a part of the job field will disappear, Lu Huan said to Zhou Man, for the time being, you don't have the qualifications to turn the job field into a private field without knowing it from the household. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1629. Man Bao was taken aback and said, "I didn't intend to turn the job field into a private field, isn't that a Chinese beetle?" She said, "I just want to manage the tenants and the farm by myself, and the farming will be more meticulous and the harvest will be higher. If I don't become an official in the future, or if I change the official position and change the farm, the original farm will be sure going back." Lu Huan said, "I also said that you are not such a person, but my grandfather has no doubts. He only said that the management of the job field is also very complicated. If you want to manage your own children, you can only go to the Ministry of Household to apply for a report." Bai Shan then said to Man Bao, "That's probably fine. I'll go with you later when I find time." Man Bao rolled his eyes and said, "Mr. S job field is right next to me. Let's call Mr. together. Mr. Zhuang doesn't care about the job field at all. Now he is all focused on studying and teaching the prince and the three disciples. The job field should not be the same as the salary. When the time comes, he should get the share he deserves. Is it okay? But Man Bao was full of confidence, and there were many people in the old Zhou family in the capital. In terms of farming, they were much better than him, so he nodded after thinking about it. Then he said, "It is not easy for you to come out of the palace. Since you have already mentioned it in Lu Shang's written statement, then you can leave this matter to me. I will go to the Ministry of Household to apply for the formalities." Man Bao and Bai Shan both breathed a sigh of relief. After all, it was an exception, and they were still a little embarrassed. Mr. Zhuang smiled at them, comforted them, and then let them play, keeping this matter in mind. The reason why he took the initiative to take over this matter was to inquire in more detail. He doesn't know much about the management of job fields, but as far as he knows, job farms have always been managed by the household department. After the harvest every summer and autumn, the household department will calculate the rental output of each person, and they will be distributed by the household together. Department delivered. Even for local officials, there are people in the Yamen who are responsible for this matter. However, compared to Beijing officials, most of the local officials can manage their own fields. After all, it is under its own jurisdiction, which is very convenient. Unlike Beijing officials, job fields have radiated to Yangzhou, Shangzhou, Liangzhou and other places. Therefore, with the exception of some who have a lot of jobs and fields, they will be asked to manage themselves, and most of the officials are handed over to the Ministry of Households to manage them. Because the cost of management is also a lot, it is better to hand it over to the Ministry of Household, which saves a lot of effort. When Mr. Zhuang found the Ministry of Household, the official in charge of the field of households only glanced at Mr. Zhuang and gave him 2 forms for him to fill out. Then he said, "Lord Zhou Xiao still has to use her seal to confirm that it is her own will." Mr. Zhuang knew at a glance that someone had already greeted him, and he smiled and inquired about the current situation of the job field. Regardless of the fact that the Ministry of Household manages the fields of officials of all sizes, the officials in charge of this matter are not of high rank, only 7 ranks, which is slightly higher than that of Mr. Zhuang. Because Mr. Zhuang was here to apply for self-management, he just had to clarify some matters to him, so he took the opportunity to talk about the management of this job field. Mr. Zhuang returned to Chongguan Hall with a thoughtful expression, and then called Man Bao to him. Of course, Bai Shan and Bai Erlang were also having lunch, so the 3 of them were called to him together. "Man Bao, you have a total of 1,000 mu of farmland. With so many fields, have you thought about how to farm it?" Man Bao immediately said, "Isn't there a tenant farmer? Just instruct the tenant farmer at that time. My father wants to take care of it himself." Mr. Zhuang said, "There may be no tenant farmers." Man Bao widened his eyes, and Bai Shan raised his head in surprise. "How come there are no tenant farmers?" "Because it is difficult to hire tenant farmers," Mr. Zhuang said. "Why do you think the Ministry of Household is so lenient? If you want to manage your own farmland, it will be given to you immediately." He said, "Because the job field is not easy to manage at all. Not only is it not easy to manage, but it is simply not thankful to work hard. Regardless of the fact that many farms are good farmland, people from the household department said that there are not many tenant farmers who are willing to rent farmland for farming. Between buckets of rice, it depends on the soil and fertilizer conditions." Bai Shan did the math and said, "It's reasonable." Mr. Zhuang nodded and said, "But this must be given. For renting other people's land, the owner may also give some good seeds and farming tools, but the court has nothing here, so they don't like renting farmland. Many tenant farmers are forced to rent crops, so if you want to manage your own farmland, it may be difficult to recruit tenant farmers." Man Bao said, "You have to see it on the spot to know." After counting the days, Bai Shan said, "The Mid-Autumn Festival will be in a few days. I heard that there will be foreign vassals coming to the DPRK during the Mid-Autumn Festival this year. I will take a few more days off, otherwise we will go to Yangzhou to see. Man Bao's eyes lit up and immediately said, okay, okay. Even if you don't go to the job field, it's good to go to Yangzhou to play. Bai Erlang also wanted to go, it's not too far away anyway, half a day's work will be done, we can still stay in the village for a few more days, I heard that the sheep scorpion in Yangzhou is very delicious. Bai Shan and Man Bao wanted to go even more. Mr. Zhuang, who still had a lot of words to say, was silent for a while, and then simply handed over a booklet to Man Bao. Although the farm is handed over to us to manage, there are also requirements, such as all the rent and taxes with the tenant farmers, fixed the rent cannot exceed 6 buckets of meters, and the sublease cannot exceed 60%. This was the only measure the court could take to protect the tenant farmers. Man Bao agreed, and after reading the regulations, he said to Bai Erlang, you can even ask for 60% of the sub-rent, but it's really dark. I thought everyone would ask for 40%. Isn't your family always taking 40%? Divided by place, Bai Erlang didn't know much, but every year Zhuangtu came to his house to report the situation, so he listened and said, in some places, my father also receives 50%. Man Bao was curious, why is it different? Bai Erlang, how do I know? Why don't I ask my father for you when I go back? Bai Shan said, because the place is different, the soil fertilizer is also different. He said, Lujiang County is where he lives after all, even in order to make good neighbors, he should take less tax. In other places, take less land for thin land, and take more land for rich land. Now my family is in Longzhou. Taxes in the area are also mostly 40%, and only 50% in some places. Man Bao and Bai Erlang were stunned when they heard it. Grandma said, even if we don't live in Longzhou now, that is our hometown, where our family is, and we should manage the local area well. Bai Shan said meaningfully, the rabbits don't eat the grass on the edge of the nest. The surrounding areas where they are located have high rents, and most of them will not last long, even the wealthy families, they have to be more tolerant to the tenants around them. A very realistic question, but for some reason, Man Bao felt a little chill in her heart. She secretly said, isn't this the exploitation written in some books in the encyclopedia? Bai Shan obviously thought of it too, looked at Man Bao and said, it's not necessarily a bad thing for the tenant farmers if you have to manage the farm by yourself. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1630. If nothing else, even the old Zhutu is not hard-hearted. Mr. Zhuang nodded and said, the reason why the Ministry of Household has so quickly agreed to hand over the farmland to you is another reason, that is, the drought in Yangzhou this year, and the ordinary people will pay it back. This year will be over as soon as the belts endure, but those tenant farmers may be in a difficult situation. Therefore, it is even more difficult for the tenant farmers to manage. If the Ministry of Household can manage some of the fields less, there will be less trouble. If it is not due to their duties, they are willing to leave it all to individuals. Sure enough, the application form handed by Mr. Zhuang was quickly replied, and the household department directly completed the formalities for them. It happened that their job fields were actually allocated in June. It's just that there are still crops in the fields, which belong to the income of the previous officials, so they don't belong to them. But now most of the crops in the fields have been harvested, so the household department directly gave them the address and documents, and asked them to follow the address to find the district chief, and then they could go to the job field. Because of the relationship between Zhou Man and their young master, the official of the Ministry of Households also reminded, if you want to hire tenant farmers, it is best to make an appointment before Chongyang, otherwise after Chongyang, it will be difficult for you to find tenant farmers. Already. For the Ministry of Household, the most difficult thing in managing farmland is not the lack of fields, but the lack of manpower. Mr. Zhuang wrote down the matter, and then went back and told the 3 disciples. Mr. Zhuang said, "It's just right, Bai Shan and Bai Cheng. In the future, you will all start as parents and officials. This time, you will start with managing the tenant farmers." The tenant farmer. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang feel that there is no problem at all. In Lujian County, as long as there is land, are they afraid that no one will farm it? The old Zhutu thought so too. He only learned about this from Mr. Zhuang, and he immediately asked Zhou Dalan to pack up his things. "When Man Baoxiamo comes back for the Mid-Autumn Festival, we will go to Yangzhou to take a look." I listen. Master Bai said that Yangzhou is very different from our Lujian County. The fields there are large and large, there are few mountains, and the fields allocated to officials are all cultivated land. When Zhou Dalan heard the words, he went back to pack his things. He felt that it was wrong to keep them, so he ran back and asked his father, "Father, we have all gone to Yangzhou to farm, what about the land at home?" The old Zhutu fell silent, and began to touch the dry tobacco bag on his waist again. When Qian saw him, he patted his hand and said to Zhou Dalan, "The second and third are both at home, what are you afraid of? The third is a good way of farming, whoever makes a mistake, the third child will not make a mistake. But the second brother and the third brother, there are too few people. There are so many fields in the family, and there are medicinal materials grown on the mountains. The second child is here, he will hire someone if he is too busy." Qianshi was not very worried about this, and said, "It's you." I listened to Mr. Zhuang. It seems that it is very difficult to find farmers in Yangzhou. People. The old Zhutu said, "How can there be less people who farm? Haven't you heard Mr. Bai say that Yangzhou is a companion capital? Do you know what a companion capital is?" Qianshi really didn't know. Old Zhutu didn't know either, but he would brag, "It's a big city." Can such a big city have fewer people? If there are people, there will be people who farm, don't worry. Seeing that he was so proud, MRSGN became even more worried. After thinking about it, he said, "When Manbao leaves the palace, I will go with you." "What are you going to do?" Lao Zhutu muttered, "You are not in good health, you can't run back and forth." "I'm already in good health. I have walked from the village to the capital for 12 days. Are you still afraid of the half-day journey to Yangzhou?" Old Zhutu really couldn't tell Qian's family affairs, so Qian's family decided to go, but old Zhutu really couldn't stop her. As a result, Qianshi not only went by herself, but she also went to make an appointment with Mrs. Lu. "I heard that their palace has a long mid-autumn festival holiday, the old lady might as well go to Yangzhou to play. We are from the countryside, we have little knowledge, and we still think, please, old man, go and give us a slap." Their family only hired temporary workers, not even long-term workers, let alone tenant farmers. There is only one landlord in the village, Mr. Bai, but there is no tenant farmer in Qilai village. At most, he has done part-time labor for Mr. Bai, so he doesn't know much about this market. For unknown things, even the Qian family will be timid and afraid, so it is better to have a knowledgeable person to give advice. Mrs. Lu did not think about it for a long time before she agreed. She smiled and said, "It just so happens that our family also has a village in the suburbs of Yangzhou. It is still hot now, so why don't we live in the village? Now that the fruits are ripe, let's eat and eat. Melons and fruits are also good." Qianshi had no opinion, so everyone settled on that. Manbao and the others came out on the evening of August 13. This time they only went to school for 3 days. Manbao cheered and ran from the gate to the west courtyard to find her sister-in-law, and shouted loudly, "Let's take a break." "Well, this time you can take a 5-day break." Little Qian came out of the room in surprise and asked happily, "Really?" Manbao nodded fiercely, "His Majesty will have fun with the people on the Mid-Autumn Festival night, so tomorrow night the palace will be ready, and their family will also move back from Daming Palace, so we will have a holiday." He added, "At the age of 16, we will have to summon the envoys of various countries, and it will be lively for 2 more days, so we will take a 5-day leave, and we will not enter the palace until the 18th. After doing the math, MRSGN asked, but isn't 20 the day when young Master Bai gets married, and you guys are going to enter the palace at 19? Man Bao smiled and said, we've already arrived, so before leaving the palace, I took leave of absence with Kong Jiju and Xiao Yuan Zheng, and only entered the palace as an errand on the 21st. That's why she is so happy, she has a full 7-day vacation. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang were also very happy, and they ran back to tell their family about the big happy event. Bai Erlang didn't know what to worry about, and even invited his brother to go to Yangzhou with them to play, and then come back on the 19th to prepare for marriage. Bai Dalan directly gave him a head and said, I don't expect you to help me. Anyway, don't make trouble. I'm about to get married and I'm going out to play. Who do I leave all the things at home? Bai Erlang touched his head and said, Dad has already bought you a good house, and the furniture in it has also been replaced. What else do I need you to do? Bai Dalan was about to count him with his fingers, but suddenly thought of why he had to tell him this in advance. So he said, when you get married, you will know. If getting married is as easy as you think, why did Dad push the date of marriage to the 20th? Bai Erlang turned around and ran out, shouting, forget it, if you don't go, I'll go with Manbao Baishan and the others, but don't worry, I'll bring you delicious melons and fruits back. Mr. Zhuang was also going, and Manbao also called Lejun and Liru, so she told her father, Father, in the future, Lejun will help you manage such a large account in this land, so I asked Lejun to help you. Go and have a look. Li Ru has been too tired from studying medicine recently, so he also went out for a walk. The old Zhutu said, let your 4th and 5th sister-in-law also go, the crops in this field should have been harvested. I don't think there is much grass in the field, if there is too much, let's tidy up the field first, get ready for winter. Fang Shi and others who want to play. See you at 9.